It already happened. 3 words. That's all it took to shatter every illusion I'd been clinging to. It was a Tuesday morning when the call came. Too early for anything good, too calm to expect catastrophe. I was in the middle of trimming the roses outside my kitchen window when the phone rang. The caller ID said, Fiona. I hadn't heard from her in over 6 months. Even then, our conversations were brief, brittle, almost choreographed in their politeness. But I answered. Of course I answered. Opal, she said, her voice flat. I wanted to let you know. Ethan passed away last night. Just like that, no preamble, no context, just an obituary disguised as a sentence. I didn't speak right away. I couldn't. The pruning shears in my hand slid from my fingers into the flower bed. I felt the sting of a thorn catch my wrist, but I barely noticed. What do you mean, he passed away? I whispered. She let out a small sigh. Not the grieving kind, the kind you hear from someone annoyed by inconvenience. Complications from the surgery. He didn't wake up from anesthesia. It was peaceful. Peaceful. I grabbed the edge of the countertop to steady myself. I'd just spoken to Ethan 5 days ago. He told me he was nervous about the surgery but optimistic. Said he'd call me after, and we'd finally plan that weekend visit he kept postponing. Said he missed me. I didn't even know the surgery had happened, I said, more to myself than her. I thought it was next week. Well, she said crisply, it was moved up. Urgently. I assumed you knew. Assumed. That word had claws. And the memorial? When will that be? There was a pause. It lasted a beat too long. Then she said it, casually, like she was reporting the weather. It already happened. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? The memorial. We held a small gathering at the house, just some friends and colleagues. It felt right to keep it intimate. Ethan wouldn't have wanted a big scene. I sat down on the nearest chair, the pain in my chest blooming like a bruise. So you didn't think to call me? To invite me to my own son's memorial? It wasn't really an invitation sort of event, she said, as if that explained anything. More of a reflection, quiet, informal, close friends only. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. I'm not a close friend, Fiona. I'm his mother. Another pause. Then, I just thought, with everything over the last few years, the distance, the tension, it might be best. My voice came out sharper than I expected. Best for who? She didn't answer. I heard something clatter in the background, maybe a plate or a glass, probably preparing brunch after the quiet reflection. Fiona, how could you do this? I said, my voice cracking. How could you bury him without telling me? He was cremated, she corrected, and his ashes are here, with me. The finality of it hit me like a slammed door. Not only had I missed the goodbye, I'd never get one. No service, no resting place, no moment to stand in silence and remember the boy I'd raised and the man I barely got to know. I don't even know where to begin, I whispered. Well, maybe you shouldn't, she replied, and for a split second, I heard something raw in her voice. Not regret, not grief, maybe fear or guilt, but it vanished quickly, masked behind her usual composure. Look, I have to go. Thank you for understanding. I don't, I said quietly. But she'd already hung up. I sat there in silence, staring at the phone in my hand like it might ring again and correct everything. That this was a mistake, that Ethan was still alive, that there was still time. But the line stayed dead, and so did my son. I looked out at the garden. The rose shears were half buried in dirt. A single petal drifted onto the walkway. The sun was still shining, the world still turning, but everything had shifted in me, irreversibly. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later, in waves I couldn't control. But in that moment, all I felt was silence. Not just the kind that comes after a phone call ends, the kind that follows erasure, the kind of silence you feel in your bones when you realize someone made a decision, a final one, without you. When you realize you weren't just left out of the memorial, you were removed from the memory. I bought the chrysanthemums that morning, still thinking I'd be delivering them to a recovery room, not mourning alone in my kitchen. White chrysanthemums. 3 bunches. I remember standing in front of the flower stand at Green's Market, holding them in my hand like some kind of fragile promise. They were Ethan's favorite. He used to call them fireworks in a vase. When he was little, he'd pick the heads off of them in the yard and shout, "Boom!" before tossing them like they were little stars. It annoyed the neighbors. I never stopped him. I'd planned to take them to the hospital the next day. That was the plan. I was finally going to see him. He said he'd be out of surgery by Thursday. Said he wanted to talk about making things right. "Just us," he'd said. "You and me, Mom." But now the flowers sat untouched on my kitchen table, stems still wrapped in butcher paper, waterless, wilting faster than grief could catch up. They'd never make it to his hands, or to a room, or anywhere, really. Because according to Fiona, everything had already happened. The surgery, the memorial, the goodbye, and none of it had included me. I spent that afternoon in a haze, not crying, not thinking, just moving. I cleaned the counters, reorganized the spice rack, took the old cookie jar down and scrubbed it even though no one but me had opened it in years. Anything to keep my hands busy. Anything to outrun the weight that was closing in like fog over a quiet lake. But it didn't work. Around 3 p.m., I picked up the phone and called the hospital. I don't even remember what I planned to say. Maybe I wanted confirmation, or contradiction. Maybe I was hoping someone, anyone, would say, "No, he's still here, recovering, waiting for you." The line rang twice. "St. Andrew's Medical Center, how may I direct your call?" "I'm looking for information on a patient," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Ethan Richmond. He had a procedure this week. His wife told me he passed, but—" "One moment, ma'am. I'll transfer you to patient information." There was hold music. Something classical and too cheerful. I stood by the sink, staring out at the bird feeder swaying in the wind. A robin landed, pecked once, and flew away. The silence between the notes was unbearable. "Patient information. This is Denise speaking." I took a breath. "Yes, I'm calling about Ethan Richmond, my son." "Can I ask your relationship to the patient?" "I'm his mother," I said, and hearing it out loud felt like swallowing glass. "His wife said he passed away here. I just need to confirm that." Another pause. Typing. Clicking. Then, "I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't have any recent records for an Ethan Richmond. Are you sure it was St. Andrew's?" "Yes," I said quickly. "Well, I think so. It's the hospital he's always gone to. He said—" I stopped. Did he say? Or had I assumed? "I'm sorry," Denise repeated, gentle but firm. "We haven't had any admissions under that name in the past month." I thanked her, hung up, and stood there gripping the phone like it might still tell me something useful if I held it tight enough. The air felt thinner in the kitchen. The chrysanthemums looked wrong now, too white, too loud against the wood grain, like they didn't belong in this version of reality. I went to my bedroom, pulled open the drawer where I kept old voicemails saved from Ethan, the ones that never got deleted. His voice played through the little speaker. Birthday calls, quick check-ins. "Hey, Mom, just calling to say hi." He always sounded in a rush, always like someone who was planning to circle back. I pulled out my planner. The surgery had been circled in blue ink. Ethan's surgery, St. Andrews, Thursday. My handwriting, my assumption. I flipped back a few pages. Notes about trying to call him. Little hearts drawn next to his name like a schoolgirl crush, like hope made solid in ink. But none of it added up now. Why hadn't Fiona told me sooner? Why hadn't the hospital confirmed it? Why was there no obituary, no online tribute, no record of his death outside of Fiona's words? I Googled his name. Nothing. Not even a funeral notice. I checked social media. Fiona's page had one vague post about grief and privacy. No comments, no photo, just silence. I opened the freezer and stared into it like it might offer answers. Inside, a casserole I'd planned to bring when I visited. Chicken, wild rice, cream of mushroom. His favorite when he was sick. I'd made it the night before the call. I closed the door. That night, I sat in bed with the chrysanthemums in a vase beside me. I didn't light a candle, didn't say a prayer. I just watched them wilt. Petals fell like small, deliberate lies. One by one. Something wasn't right. And for the first time since Fiona's call, I let the silence speak. Not the kind of silence you sit in when someone is gone. The kind that creeps in when you start to realize they might not be telling you everything. It's one thing to grieve a death. It's another to start questioning if it even happened the way you were told, or if it happened at all. The next morning, I called the hospital again. Not St. Andrews this time, but every hospital in a 50-mile radius. Ethan could have been transferred, I told myself. Maybe Fiona had taken him somewhere else for the surgery. Maybe that's why nothing added up. Ma'am, we don't have anyone by that name in our system. I'm sorry, no record of an Ethan Richmond as an inpatient recently. We discharged a patient named Richmond, but that was nearly a month ago. Are you sure you've got the right dates? Yes, I was sure. Or I thought I was. That's what grief does. It confuses your timeline, frays your memory. But I had it in writing. Blue ink on my calendar. A printed email from Ethan confirming the surgery date. I'll call you after it's over, Mom, he'd written. Let's plan a visit. Just us this time. But the call never came. And now neither did the confirmation of his death. I sat at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, pen in the other, drawing tight, angry circles on a napkin. The chrysanthemums were dead now. I should have thrown them out, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. They were the last thing I'd bought for him, even if he never saw them. The word that had been buzzing at the edge of my mind finally settled. Buried. That's what Fiona had said, that the memorial already happened, that he'd been cremated. But there had been no ashes, no certificate, no obituary, no trace of him anywhere. Not in hospitals, not in announcements, just a vague social media post about grief and privacy, and a single phone call that had ended faster than a wrong number. So I made another list, this time of funeral homes. Peterson and Sons, Elder Ridge Memorial, Crestview Funeral Chapel, Briarwood and Lakeview and Whitman's and every other one I could find with a working number. I didn't tell them I was a grieving mother. I'd learned by now that grief makes people uncomfortable. It makes them cautious. So instead, I said I was looking to confirm a service. My son, Ethan Richmond, passed recently. I was checking the time, the arrangements, just in case. Could they help? The answers came fast and uniformly polite. No service scheduled for anyone under that name. Cremation? No, nothing in our files. We haven't worked with a Fiona Richmond either. Are you sure the arrangements weren't made out of state? Out of state. That stuck. Would she have taken him that far just to hide the truth from me? By the time I called the 7th funeral home, My voice had gone dry. I stopped writing down the answers. They were all the same. Ethan wasn't in their records. No one had seen him. No one had helped her bury him, or scatter ashes, or even file paperwork. But it was the eighth call that made something in me finally break. "Yes, I remember that name," the woman on the line said, "but only because someone called last week asking about how long it takes to order a death certificate." I froze. "Excuse me?" She didn't say the person had passed in our care, just said she was gathering information and didn't have the documents yet, which seemed odd. "What was her name?" A pause. "She didn't say, just asked general questions." I didn't think much of it at the time. But I did. That night, I sat in Ethan's childhood bedroom for the first time in years. The baseball trophies were still on the shelves, his high school sweatshirt still in the closet. I curled up in the desk chair he used to do homework in, holding a shoebox of old photos, and tried to understand the new shape of this nightmare. My son was gone, or so I'd been told. But there was no body, no certificate, no ashes, no closure. Just a woman who had married him, managed him, and now, maybe, erased him. Was he really dead? The question horrified me. But even more horrifying was the quiet, growing sense that I might never know for sure. That the truth, whatever it was, had been packed away with his shirts and his voice and his promises to call me after surgery. And Fiona was holding the key. You can't fake grief. Not with paper plates and potato salad. It was nearly midnight when I opened Facebook. I hadn't been on it in weeks. Social media never offered much comfort. Not when your son barely posted, and your daughter-in-law curated her life like a catalog. But something kept tugging at me. A thread I couldn't name yet. Just that feeling in your chest when the truth is about to surface, and you're not sure if it'll save you or drown you. I searched Fiona's profile first, still private, of course. The banner was a filtered photo of a eucalyptus wreath on a whitewashed door. The kind of thing that screamed controlled grief. Her most recent post, the only one since the call, read, "Grief is a private journey. Please respect our space." No details, no date, no mention of Ethan. Just a vague caption with a quote about closure. But then I clicked over to one of her friends, a woman named Heather, who used to comment on Fiona's photos with far too many heart emojis. I barely knew her, but I remembered her face from the wedding. Loud laugh, louder necklace. And there it was, a photo, time-stamped, Saturday at 3:12 p.m., the exact time Fiona claimed the memorial had taken place. The caption said, "Beautiful backyard brunch with the girls' sunshine, laughter, and mimosas in honor of, well, life. Healing together. Healing together." I stared at the image, Fiona's back patio, that familiar pale stone I'd stood on once, years ago. A long folding table with mismatched chairs, glass pitchers of lemonade, a platter of deviled eggs, and faces. Too many smiling faces. Heather, Olivia, her Pilates partner, Fiona, standing by the grill, laughing at something, and others, neighbors, women I barely knew, but recognized from Ethan's Facebook friends list. But no one looked like they were mourning. No dark clothes, no folded programs, no framed photos of Ethan, no floral wreaths, no urn, no candles, no quiet. Just a bright summer afternoon with wine glasses and sunglasses, and someone's toddler chasing bubbles across the lawn. I zoomed in, hoping I was wrong. Hoping maybe Ethan's picture was tucked in the corner. Maybe Fiona was just hiding her pain behind that Instagram-perfect smile. Maybe this was grief, her version of it. But no, this wasn't a memorial. This was a party. And suddenly, something shifted. Something broke. Because I remembered what she'd said on the phone. It already happened. Said with finality, with frost, as if she was tired of repeating herself, as if she was trying to make me feel intrusive for even asking. But now I saw it for what it was. That sentence wasn't the end of a conversation. It was a cover story, a shield, a way to draw a curtain over the truth before I had time to ask for details. I went back to the photo and saved it, just in case. Then I scrolled through the comments, mostly heart emojis and compliments on the food. One person said, "Looked like such a fun time." And Fiona had replied, "It was exactly what we needed. Light and laughter. No heaviness." No heaviness. No mention of a man who had supposedly just died. I clicked through more profiles, searching for more photos, more posts, anything that could either confirm or challenge what I was seeing. And I found a short video on Olivia's page, only 6 seconds long. A slow pan of the backyard. Someone pouring sangria. Fiona clinking glasses with another woman. Music playing in the background. Something upbeat and completely wrong. And Ethan? Nowhere. I sat there, frozen, the laptop screen lighting up the kitchen in that dim, unforgiving glow. My tea had gone cold. The vase of dead chrysanthemums still sat on the table, now browning and limp, like a joke with a rotten punchline. There had been no memorial. Or if there had, I wasn't meant to witness it. Not even digitally. Not even as a footnote. I was the blank space in the story Fiona had scripted. A story with no room for the mother of the man she married. A man who, by all visible evidence, was grieved less than a dropped cocktail glass at her brunch. I closed the laptop and sat back, heart pounding. This wasn't just about pain anymore. This was about intent. Fiona hadn't just excluded me from Ethan's memorial. She'd never held one at all. She'd held a gathering, a distraction, a staged event for optics, or worse, for celebration. And in that moment, one thought rose above the rest, loud and clear. What else was she hiding? The truth doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it slips through the cracks. Or in my case, through the mailbox. It was the following morning when I found it. I was pulling out the recycling, still in my robe, hair tied up in a half-hearted knot, when I noticed a thick envelope wedged behind a gardening catalog and a coupon booklet in the mailbox. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Probably some delayed bill or another advertisement I didn't ask for. But then I saw the handwriting. Neat, blocky, and unmistakably his. Ethan. My heart stuttered. I turned the envelope over in my hands. There was no return address. Just my name in that familiar print, and a postmark from 5 days before the date Fiona claimed he had died. 5 days. I stood frozen on the porch, the mail slipping from my other hand onto the step. For a moment, I didn't dare open it, as if the act of reading it might collapse whatever fragile reality I was still trying to stand on. But my fingers moved anyway, slow, careful. Inside was a single page. No card, no photos, no formalities, just a letter. A letter from my son. "Hey, Mom," it began. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I know things have been weird, distant. I hate that. I really do. But I've been trying to figure some stuff out. Stuff I probably should have dealt with sooner. Anyway, I just wanted to say I miss you. And I've got some ideas for how we fix this. Starting with that visit we keep putting off." My eyes burned. Fiona's out of town this week, and it's giving me time to breathe. I've been sorting through old photos, making plans to renovate the guest room. I know finally. I'd love for you to stay here. Just us. You, me, coffee in the mornings, and arguing over crossword clues like we used to. No mention of surgery. No talk of complications or hospitals or recovery timelines. Only hope. I know we've both made mistakes. I want to start again. I want to show you I haven't forgotten who you are to me. And maybe remind myself of who I am too. The handwriting grew slightly slanted near the bottom, as if he'd rushed the end. But there was no sense of finality in it. No hint that this would be his last message. Talk soon. Love you always. E. I read it 3 times before I even realized I was crying. This letter didn't come from a man preparing for death. It came from someone making plans. Planning to reconnect. Planning to repair. So why hadn't I received it sooner? Why had Fiona never mentioned it? Why had she told me he was recovering from surgery if he never even wrote about going in for one? I looked again at the postmark. Mailed 5 days before his supposed death, which meant he'd written it even earlier. So either Fiona had lied about the date, or she'd lied about the death itself. A chill ran down my spine. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter spread out in front of me like evidence. Because that's what it was now. Not just a note, not just a keepsake. It was proof that something was off. Deeply, dangerously off. Everything Fiona had said started unraveling. The phone call, the vague explanations, the so-called memorial that looked more like a backyard brunch. I'd been dismissed, sidelined, gaslit into grief. But Ethan's words had cut through the fog. I miss you. I've been thinking about you. I want to start again. You don't write that to someone you're about to leave behind. You write that when you're ready to come home. And now he never would. Because whatever happened after he sent this letter, someone made sure I wouldn't find out until it was too late. I folded the page gently, like it might tear under the weight of what it knew. Something was wrong. And suddenly, I wasn't just mourning, I was investigating. Grief doesn't rattle the guilty the same way it rattles the innocent. Guilt has its own tremble. My phone rang at 7:43 a.m. I hadn't spoken to Fiona since the day she'd called to tell me my son was gone. Since then, I'd left her voice on mute and her memory on ice. But something about that morning, the letter in my drawer, the photo of the brunch masquerading as a memorial, the rising unease I couldn't shake, made me answer. Opal? Her voice cracked the second I picked up. I didn't say anything. She went on anyway. I know I shouldn't be calling, but I need to talk to you. Please, just before anything else happens. I sat down at the kitchen table, the old floral placemat curling at the edges under my coffee mug. My voice stayed flat. What's happened, Fiona? A shaky breath. Look, I know things have been tense, and I know maybe I didn't handle things exactly right with everything. But I heard from a friend, from someone at the law office, that you've been calling around. Funeral homes, probate, hospitals. I have, I said. She was quiet for a second, then burst out, Opal, please. Please don't involve lawyers. Her voice was thin, panicked, no longer the polished, poised daughter-in-law who could smile through a knife in the back. This voice belonged to someone who just realized the story she was telling had holes. Why not? I asked calmly. Is there something they might find that you wouldn't want them to see? No, she said too quickly. It's just, look, things got complicated after he passed. Ethan had specific wishes, okay? About the burial, about how fast things needed to happen. I didn't say anything. She kept going. He didn't want a big thing. He told me that. He said he wanted it to be quick. No fuss, no drama, just clean. Clean. That was the word she chose. Like she'd been disposing of a mistake, not laying a man to rest. You're saying Ethan wanted to be buried without his mother knowing? I asked. I'm saying, she replied, her voice sharpening, that he wanted peace, and I was trying to give him that. I stared at the vase of dead chrysanthemums still on the windowsill. Did you read the letter he sent me? A pause. What letter? I found it yesterday. It was postmarked 5 days before you claim he died. He talked about renovating the guest room, inviting me over, coffee and crosswords. I didn't know about any letter, she said, but I could hear the shift in her tone, like a door slamming inside her chest. No mention of illness, I added. No talk of surgery, just plans. She didn't respond. I continued. And yet, according to you, he died of complications. And somehow, every hospital I've called says they never had him. There's no death certificate on file, no obituary, no record of cremation. Because it was private, she hissed. No, Fiona, it was hidden. Her breathing turned shallow, erratic. You don't know what you're saying. Oh, I do. You staged a memorial with lemonade and brunch. You cremated a man without paperwork. You told his mother, his only parent, that he didn't want her there. And now you're panicking because I've started asking questions. She was crying now. I could hear it, though she was trying to hide it. Opal, please. Lawyers will tear this apart. They'll make assumptions. They'll think I did something wrong. I said nothing. They'll think... That's exactly what I'm counting on, I said quietly. A gasp. So you're going to ruin me? No, I replied, sipping my now cold coffee. I'm going to the lawyer's office. I'm going to read my son's will. I'm going to find out what's mine, what's his, and what you tried to bury along with him. And then I'll decide what happens next. Silence, just her breath, broken, shallow, waiting. And then, for the first time since Ethan died, or since I was told he did, I smiled. Because I'd finally heard it. Fiona cracked. Some letters are written with love, others with truth, and some, with both, are designed to detonate. It arrived 2 days after Fiona's panicked call. A cream-colored envelope slipped through the mail slot, crisp and formal, my name handwritten in firm strokes. The return address was a law office I didn't recognize, Hartwell and Company, probate and estate law. I hadn't contacted them, not yet. But apparently, someone had contacted me. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear anything. Inside was a letter printed on thick paper with an embossed header. The kind of paper you use when what you're saying can't be taken back. Dear Mrs. Opal Richmond, we are reaching out as representatives of your late son, Mr. Ethan Richmond, regarding matters related to his final will and estate. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to schedule an in-person consultation. This pertains to documentation Mr. Richmond updated 3 months prior to his passing. Respectfully, David Hartwell, Esquire, 3 months prior. My hands trembled, but not from shock. From a strange, settling kind of clarity. While Fiona had been planning brunches and stories, Ethan had been making decisions. Quiet ones, legal ones. I called the office immediately. The woman on the other end, Margot, polite and efficient, scheduled me for the next morning. Mr. Hartwell has been expecting your call, she said. I didn't ask how long they'd been waiting to hear from me. I didn't need to. When I arrived at the office, it was exactly what you'd expect from a man who handled grief on paper. Polished wood floors, shelves lined with heavy law books, a coffee pot in the corner that smelled stronger than anything Starbucks could offer, and a receptionist who spoke in hushed tones, like grief was contagious. David Hartwell was younger than I expected, 40s maybe, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he'd seen enough pain to know when someone was lying, or grieving, or both. Mrs. Richmond, he said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry it had to be under these circumstances. I nodded, taking the seat across from his desk. Let's just get to it. He opened a thick file with Ethan's name printed in gold across the tab. Your son updated his will 3 months ago, he said. He did so with full legal oversight. No coercion, no ambiguity. Everything was properly notarized and witnessed. I swallowed. And what did it say? Mr. Hartwell adjusted his glasses. The entirety of his estate, property, savings, life insurance, and personal effects, was left to you. Not Fiona. To me. For a moment I didn't breathe. He continued gently. Mr. Richmond was very specific in his language. He mentioned an intent to revise the distribution due to what he described as a pattern of isolation and manipulation within his marriage. He expressed concern that his relationship with you, his mother, had been deliberately sabotaged. I closed my eyes, Ethan's final letter echoing in my mind. Did Fiona know about this? I asked. She did not, he replied. She attempted to submit a previous version of the will, the one from before their wedding, as valid. Unfortunately for her, the updated will is both more recent and fully legal. I exhaled slowly. She's been claiming he was cremated, that there was a private memorial, no death certificate, no paperwork, nothing. Can you confirm he passed? Mr. Hartwell's eyes met mine. We've received only a digital death notification from a hospital across state lines, no hard certificate. And that's highly irregular. We've submitted a formal request for verification. At present, all we have is a scan, provided by Fiona herself. Are you saying it could be fake? I'm saying it's being investigated. I leaned back in my chair. My body felt both weightless and full of bricks. He reached into the file and pulled out a second envelope. There's more, he said. Ethan left this for you. A handwritten letter, sealed and dated the same day the new will was signed. I took it with shaking hands. What happens now? Mr. Hartwell folded his hands on the desk. Now? Now you decide what to do with the truth. Fiona has no legal claim to any part of your son's estate. Everything passes to you. Everything. And yet all I could think of was the man who'd once written me a letter full of hope, and the woman who tried to bury it all in silence. Fiona hadn't just lied to me. She'd lied to the law. And Ethan had seen it coming. Some people bury bodies. Others bury truths. Fiona had tried to do both. But Ethan had already started digging first. I didn't open the letter at the office. Something in me knew it had to be done alone, in silence, without anyone watching my face collapse as the words unfolded. So I thanked Mr. Hartwell, tucked the envelope carefully into my purse like it was breakable glass, and walked out of that building as if I were carrying my son home. When I got back, I didn't go to the kitchen or the living room or even Ethan's old bedroom. I went to the sunroom, the place where I used to read while he played in the backyard, where the light hit the windows just right and everything felt softer. I sat down in the wicker chair with the faded cushion and held the envelope in my lap for a long time, just holding it, like it might warm up, like it might whisper something first. It didn't. So I opened it. There were 5 handwritten pages inside, not typed, not dictated, just Ethan's handwriting, sharp, deliberate, with the occasional loop where he got distracted. And at the very top, just one word. Mom. Mom, if you're reading this, then things didn't go the way I hoped. And I'm sorry. I wanted this to happen in person. I wanted to say it face to face. No letters, no lawyers. Just us, like it always used to be. I've spent the last few months trying to untangle a knot I didn't even know I'd been living in. I thought our distance was something that happened slowly, naturally. Me growing up, marriage, new routines. I believed it when Fiona said you were too busy to call, or that you didn't want to visit, that you were pulling away, trying to give us space. But then I found your messages. Not the ones on my phone. Those never got to me. I mean the ones buried in a folder Fiona thought I'd never see. Emails, cards, voicemails you left on the landline. All kinds of plans you'd made. Dinners, visits, birthdays. I saw them, and I saw what she did with them. She deleted. She replied on my behalf. She even blocked your number once and said it was a carrier issue. She didn't want me to know you were trying. She said it was for my own good. Said you were too much. Said it stressed me out to talk to you. And for a while, I believed her. I believed a lot of things I shouldn't have. But I remember who raised me. I remember who slept in a hospital chair next to me when I had mono in college, who drove 6 hours just to bring me chicken soup, who still sends birthday cards with handwritten notes, even though I stopped writing back. I never stopped loving you, Mom. I just got lost in a life that wasn't really mine. 3 months ago, I confronted Fiona. She broke down, admitted everything, said she was afraid you'd always be more important to me, that I'd never be fully hers. She said she thought she was protecting our marriage. I told her she was dismantling it instead. I'd already started talking to a divorce attorney. I was planning to move back to the city. I wanted to buy a small house, maybe 2 blocks from yours. I wanted dinners together again, arguments over crossword puzzles, garden talk, movie nights. I wanted my mother back. That's why I updated the will. That's why I told Hartwell everything. I needed to protect what we still had, and to leave a trail in case Fiona tried to erase me from you completely. I was supposed to tell you everything after the surgery. I thought I had more time. Maybe I didn't. If she's told you I didn't want a service, she's lying. If she said we'd planned some intimate goodbye, she's lying. She rushed whatever she did to keep you from asking questions, because she knew the truth was coming. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this sooner. Should have fought harder. But I promise you this. Whatever Fiona tried to bury, I unburied it first. This letter, the will, the documents at Hartwell's office, they're yours now. So is the truth. I love you. I never stopped. I sat with that letter for what felt like hours. The sun had moved across the window. My coffee had gone cold again. But inside, something had warmed back to life. Ethan hadn't left me behind. Fiona had tried to bury the truth, but my son had handed me a shovel before he went. Now it was my turn to start digging. There's something cruel about burying a person in silence, but it's something else entirely to pretend they never existed at all. It took a week of pressure, quiet pressure, the kind that doesn't yell, it documents. Fiona stopped responding to my messages after the call from my lawyer. She'd gone quiet again, slipping into the role she knew best, the keeper of appearances. But silence doesn't hold up well when the truth is on paper and the paper has teeth. On the 7th day, she cracked again, this time by email. Just one line. Riverside Cemetery, Section F, no headstone. No apology, no explanation. Just coordinates. I stared at the screen for a long time before moving. And then I moved fast. I grabbed the chrysanthemums again. Fresh ones this time, though I wasn't sure why. Habit, maybe. Or hope. Hope that even if everything else had been ruined, at least the place where my son lay wasn't a lie. Riverside was a quiet place, unassuming, tucked behind a nursery and a shuttered auto repair shop. The kind of cemetery that didn't make the brochure. Sparse trees, no angels, no grand archway. Just rows of grass and gravel, names and dates. Section F was near the back. I walked past polished markers and bouquets still breathing with color. But when I reached the coordinates, I stopped. There it was. Or rather, there wasn't. No stone, no name, no engraved tribute. Just a rectangle of disturbed earth, dry, sinking at the center. At the foot, a small aluminum marker the size of a recipe card, staked into the ground. A typed tag inside a plastic sleeve read, Richmond, EDOD, July 14th, cremation, direct. That was it. No beloved husband, no devoted son, not even his full name. The chrysanthemums dropped from my hand before I realized it. One bloom rolled across the dirt and stopped right at the base of the marker, as if trying to decorate the absence. I sank to my knees. This was where my son had been buried? Without family, without ritual, without even a slab of stone to say he had been here? I looked around. The other plots in the section were equally barren. Paupers' corners, unclaimed ashes, names typed by clerks who'd never met the dead. But Ethan had a will. He had a house. He had a mother. He wasn't unclaimed. He had been erased. I sat back, the weight of it pressing against my ribs. I thought of Fiona, pouring lemonade in her backyard while this patch of dirt settled into silence. I thought of the brunch photos, the wine glasses, the polished captions that said, healing. I thought of the way she'd said, he didn't want a big thing, when the truth was, he wanted me. He didn't even get a stone, because she didn't want people asking questions about why I wasn't there, about why there wasn't a service, about why no one, not even his neighbors or coworkers, had heard about his passing until long after it was done. This wasn't grief. This was a cover-up. And the unmarked grave proved it. I brushed some dry leaves off the patch of dirt. My fingers trembled. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "I should have been here. I should have known sooner." I pulled out a folded photo from my purse, one of him at age 10, holding a fishing rod half his height, smiling like he'd just caught the moon. I tucked it gently under the edge of the marker. If she wouldn't give him a headstone, I'd give him a face. A memory, a history. Because what Fiona had done wasn't just exclusion. It wasn't just secrecy. It was erasure. She hadn't buried a husband. She buried a son. A boy who used to sing off-key in the car. Who wrote poems about frogs in middle school. Who stayed up all night watching meteor showers with me on the roof when he was 12. She buried all of that with no intention of letting it be remembered. But I would remember. And now, others would too. Because whatever she thought she'd hidden, Ethan had already unearthed, with his will, with his letter, with every breadcrumb of truth he left behind. And I'd follow them all, starting right here, at the grave with no marker, and a mother who had finally found it. There's a difference between grief and guilt. One begs for comfort. The other begs not to be caught. I didn't give her notice. No warning text. No knock on the door with softened breath. I rang the bell like a prosecutor, not a guest. Fiona answered after the second chime. She looked worse than the last time I saw her. Hair thrown up in a half-hearted twist, shadows beneath her eyes, her robe hanging too loose around the shoulders. But she still held the doorknob like it gave her control. Opal. Her voice was flat, practiced, still clinging to the remnants of politeness. "This isn't a good time." I stepped forward. "It's not a request." She blinked. Her mouth opened as if to argue, but the look on my face must have said everything I didn't. She moved aside. I walked past her into the same kitchen I hadn't been welcome in for nearly 5 years. The same counters where she'd once told me Ethan was too tired to visit. The same table where I imagined she forged a funeral. I laid the documents down one by one. Ethan's updated will, the digital-only death certificate she had submitted, the letter from Hartwell verifying the legal transfer of his estate to me. And then, with slow precision, I added a copy of Ethan's handwritten letter, the one where he detailed everything she'd done to keep us apart. Fiona stood frozen, one hand gripping the chair back. Her face was unreadable at first. Blank, almost. Like a wall just before it cracks. Then, slowly, She sat down. Her eyes scanned the papers but didn't linger, as if reading them would make it all too real. "You were never supposed to find any of this," she said quietly. "I know. I thought—" She swallowed. Her lips trembled now. "I thought if I just kept it quiet, kept it fast, it wouldn't unravel. That I could control the goodbye." I looked at her. Not the woman who married my son, but the one who built a wall between us brick by brick, excuse by excuse. "He didn't even have a marker, Fiona. Not a name. Just a patch of dirt and a code." "I couldn't do it," she whispered. "I couldn't bring myself to plan it. I didn't know how. I thought if I just got through the motions, if I skipped the ceremony, skipped the questions, then maybe it would all pass quicker." "No," I said. "You skipped me. Because you were afraid of what I knew." Her eyes flashed. "He was leaving me, Opal. Do you understand that? He was going to move out, leave the house, change everything. And you were the reason." "He was coming home," I said, voice steady, "to where he felt loved." Her face crumpled, finally. The fight drained out of her shoulders. I panicked. I didn't know how to lose him. I thought if I could just buy time, bury things fast, tie up the estate, maybe I'd keep some part of it. Of him. "You mean the money?" "No," she snapped. "No. I mean the story. Our story. What people thought we were. What I thought we were." I stared at her. "What did you bury, Fiona?" She didn't answer. "Fiona." Her jaw trembled. "The original will. The one before he changed it. I put it in the urn before the cremation, along with the ring I said I'd keep, and the watch he wore to our wedding. I thought if those things were gone, no one would question it." My stomach twisted. "You buried legal documents?" She nodded. "And the printout of the message he wrote to the lawyer. The one saying he was cutting me out. I couldn't stand to look at it." "So you made it disappear." "I thought it would be enough," she said, her voice barely audible. "I thought grief would cover the rest." "You didn't grieve him, Fiona. You erased him." She shook her head slowly, as if disagreeing with her own memories. "He was slipping away from me, every day, talking about you, remembering things, laughing about stories I wasn't part of. And the more he remembered you, the less he needed me." I leaned forward, voice low. "He didn't need to choose. You made him choose. And when you realized you lost, you tried to bury the evidence." Tears streamed down her face. But I didn't feel sorry. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because my son had been reduced to ashes and secrets, and I had just started to pull him back out. One truth at a time. Some sons leave behind heirlooms. Mine left behind instructions. For healing, for justice, and for love. I found the key tucked inside the old Maxwell House coffee can in the kitchen pantry, right where Ethan said it would be. It was wedged under a layer of quarters and pennies, the very same change I used to collect for his school lunches, for field trips, for ice cream truck bribes in the summertime. The can hadn't been touched in years. I pulled it down slowly, like disturbing a shrine. Inside, a small brass key rested beneath a folded index card. Written in Ethan's unmistakable hand. Box 82, First Community Bank. For Mom. My heart clenched. It was real. It was all real. Not just the will, not just the letter, but this. Something deliberate, something physical he'd hidden with me in mind. The next morning, I drove to the bank, that key burning in my coat pocket like a live wire. The branch manager, a woman named Leslie with soft eyes and quiet speech, guided me to the basement level. I signed the access log, provided the matching documents from Hartwell's office, and then, after a few short steps and one long breath, she unlocked the box. "I'll give you privacy," she said gently, and stepped away. I sat on the small bench inside the vault room, staring at the metal box in front of me, afraid to open it and afraid not to. But I did. With both hands, I lifted the lid like I was cracking open a secret he'd sealed just for me. Inside, a manila envelope labeled Legal Originals, a bundle of photos tied with twine, and a slim black flash drive in a plastic case with one word on it: Mom. I didn't touch anything right away. I just stared, letting it settle. These were pieces of him, deliberate, organized, personal. My son, even at the end, still planning, still protecting. I opened the envelope first. Inside were duplicates of the will I'd already seen. Originals, notarized, signed in pen. Ethan's signature in careful strokes, as if he knew it might be the last thing he ever signed. There was also a typed summary of assets, passwords, and a handwritten list titled, "To discuss when we reconnect." I couldn't breathe for a moment. He hadn't just rewritten his will. He'd rewritten our story. He hadn't planned an ending. He'd been preparing for a beginning. Next, I untied the bundle of photographs. My fingers trembled as I sifted through them. Ethan at age 5, wearing the cowboy boots he never took off. Ethan in his graduation gown, standing tall, proud, arms slung around my shoulder. Ethan with me, in the kitchen, flour on our noses from one of our many failed baking attempts. A photo I'd never seen. The two of us on the back porch, laughing. I didn't even remember it being taken. On the back, he'd scribbled, "This was a good day. I want more of them." By the time I reached for the flash drive, I was crying. Quiet, steady, but without shame. I clutched it to my chest before slipping it into my purse. That wasn't something I was going to watch in a bank vault. That needed to happen in a sacred place. Later that evening, I sat in Ethan's old bedroom, laptop open, heart thudding like a drum. The screen flickered. And then there he was, my son, alive in pixels, smiling nervously into the camera, his hair a little too long, his voice the same warm tone that used to wake me up on Sunday mornings when he was young and singing off-key in the hallway. "Hey, Mom," he said, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when he was unsure. "So, this is weird. I mean, I hope you never have to watch this. But if you are, if you're seeing me right now, it means Fiona did what I think she might." He paused, swallowed. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. For not seeing it sooner, for not fighting harder, for letting her convince me that distance meant love." He looked directly at the camera then, at me. "I didn't leave you, Mom. I was trying to get back. I was trying to undo what got twisted between us, and if I couldn't do it in time, I needed to make sure you knew none of this was your fault." He glanced down at a note in his lap, then back up. "Inside the box, you'll find the originals of everything. I made copies, gave some to the lawyer, and hid these here. I needed layers. I needed you to be able to prove the truth. Legally, emotionally, spiritually, however you need to." He smiled faintly. "I want you to live, Mom, not just survive this. I want you to rebuild. Use what I left you. Create something. Donate. Travel. Start again. Forgive yourself. Forgive me." His voice caught then, just for a moment. "I miss you already." Then the video ended, and I sat in that room, holding the echo of my son's voice in my hands, knowing for the first time since he died that what was taken from us could still be restored. Not through revenge, but through remembrance, and love that had never stopped moving. Buried, maybe, but never broken. Closure isn't always loud. Sometimes it sounds like the click of a pen on a legal form. One signature that severs everything. The mediation was held in a neutral conference room, sterile and beige, with a clock that ticked a little too loud and a pot of burnt coffee no one touched. Fiona sat across from me, her blouse pressed but her face unraveled, dark circles under her eyes, lips trembling even when she tried to keep still. She clutched a tissue in one hand and a pen in the other, like both might save her. David Hartwell sat between us, calm and unreadable, the executor of what Ethan had left behind. I didn't come to rage. I didn't come to punish. I came to decide. And I already had. I'm not going to draw this out, I said, looking her straight in the eyes. You're not getting a cent of his savings. The life insurance is going elsewhere, the investments too. Everything Ethan left behind. Everything he worked for, hoped for, and tried to protect, is going into a foundation. Her mouth opened, but I raised a hand. I'm not finished. She closed it. The Ethan Richmond Foundation will offer support to estranged parents, to people who were shut out of their children's lives by lies, manipulation, or emotional abuse. It'll provide grief counseling, family mediation, legal resources, and a place where mothers like me don't have to find out their child died over a phone call, after it already happened. Her chin quivered. You don't understand what I do, I interrupted. I understand exactly what you did. David cleared his throat gently. Mrs. Richmond has agreed to transfer full legal ownership of the estate to the foundation with one exception. The house, I said. She can keep the house. Fiona looked up, startled. For the first time in weeks, something like hope flickered behind her eyes. But under strict conditions, I added. She blinked. 1, you will receive no money. Not now, not ever. No monthly support, no lump sum, no hidden assets. That house is all you get. You'll pay the property taxes. You'll maintain it yourself. And if you miss a single year, it reverts to the foundation. She nodded shakily. 2, you will sign a full written admission of what you did. Not a vague apology. A record of how you manipulated Ethan, how you isolated him, how you kept us apart. You will include your attempt to submit a voided will. You'll acknowledge it was wrong, and you'll do so under legal oath. Her face went pale. That document will be sealed unless you violate the agreement. If you ever speak publicly about this family, about Ethan, or about me, it will be released. David slid the agreement toward her. That clause is non-negotiable. Fiona's hand shook as she reached for the pen. 3, I said before she could write. You will begin therapy within 30 days. Not a checkbox visit. Not a letter from a friend. Real therapy. You'll attend twice a month for a year minimum, and you'll submit confirmation. Privately, not for public display, not to impress me, but because, frankly, you need help. I know, she whispered. And 4, I said, voice quiet now but firm. You and I will have no further contact. None. No calls, no letters, no what would Ethan want, conversations. This is it. After this room we are done. Do you understand? She nodded, barely holding it together. And if you break any of this, I said, tapping the folder, you lose the house, and the whole world hears your side of the story, in your own handwriting. She looked at the paper, then at me, then back again. I'm sorry, she said. I'm not here for your apology, I replied. I'm here to carry out Ethan's wishes, and to make sure no one else has to crawl through lies to find the truth. She signed. One stroke at a time, one confession disguised as a contract. David notarized it, slid everything into a folder, and gave a small, solemn nod. It's done. No fanfare, no satisfaction, just finality. I stood up, collected my coat, and turned to her one last time. This isn't mercy, I said. It's protection. of what's left, of who he really was. You don't get to rewrite Ethan anymore. He already wrote his ending. And then I walked out. The air outside was sharp and cold, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The Ethan Richmond Foundation would open in 3 months. His photo, smiling, curious, alive, would hang in the entryway. His story would help others heal. And his name, the one Fiona tried to bury without a stone, would finally mean something again. Not just to me, but to everyone who ever needed proof that love, even when manipulated, even when tested, still has the final say. Some legacies can't be buried, not under soil, not under shame, not under lies. I wrapped the album in brown craft paper and tied it with twine. No ribbon, no note, just weight, literal and emotional. The kind of weight Fiona had never bothered to carry. It was the last thing I'd bring to her. Not because she deserved it, but because Ethan did. Inside that parcel were 32 pages of photos, letters, newspaper clippings, and memories stitched into silence. Ethan before her. Ethan before lies and distance. Ethan when he still looked at me like I was home. I rang her doorbell just after dusk. She opened it slower this time, cautious but not defiant. She didn't ask me in. That was fine. I wasn't staying. "I brought something," I said, holding it out. She looked down at the package like it might explode. "What is it?" "An education," I said. "And a mirror." She hesitated, then took it. I didn't linger. I turned and left her standing in the doorway with her arms full of history. Back in my car, I sat in silence, thinking of the pages she'd flip through, if she had the spine to do so. Page 1. Ethan in a plastic kiddie pool at age 3. Sunburned cheeks, giggling, his curls still wild and dripping. I was kneeling beside him with a popsicle in hand. Caption: July 4th, first full sentence, Mama, cold toes. Page 3. Kindergarten class photo. He was front row, missing one sock, giving the camera a peace sign while everyone else smiled politely. Page 6. Birthday party at the bowling alley. Age 9. He'd chosen a space-themed cake and insisted on wearing a cape. Fiona didn't know that part of him, the boy who thought ordinary days could be heroic. Page 9. Handwritten note. "I'm sorry I took your lipstick, Mom." I wanted to see if it could color the fish tank rocks. He was 11. I kept the note for its honesty, and the lipstick never did come out of the gravel. Page 12. Newspaper clipping. Local boy wins junior robotics fair. He built a working vending machine out of cardboard and duct tape. I drove him to every after-school meeting. He gave me the medal. I never let Fiona know I kept it. Page 17. A letter from his college dorm. It started, "Don't laugh, but I miss your cooking, even the burnt lasagna. Fiona says we should try a meal plan, but I think she's scared of my toast." That was before she rewrote our relationship. Before she made him believe my calls were intrusive instead of maternal. Page 22. Thanksgiving, the last one we shared before she began erasing me. He brought her, and she barely spoke, said our mashed potatoes were too rustic. Ethan and I laughed about it later in the kitchen. That night, he whispered, "I'll never let anyone pull me away from you." And yet, page 27, a photo of us planting the dogwood tree in the front yard, his hand on the shovel, mine steadying the sapling. Beneath it, I'd written, "Roots matter." That tree still stood, just like my memory of him. Page 30. The final page. A photo of Ethan on the porch, leaning against the railing, looking out. I'd taken it without him noticing. The light had hit his face in a way that made him look like both the boy he'd been and the man he became. Beneath it, I had written in ink, just 5 words. "You didn't know all of him." That was the page I hoped Fiona would pause on. She hadn't just stolen money, she'd stolen context. She tried to make Ethan hers alone, cut from his past, his people, his legacy. But no marriage license rewrites origin stories, and no grief, no matter how performative, excuses the destruction of a man's roots. By the time she opened that album, if she ever did, she would see the full cost of her edits. Ethan didn't come from nowhere. He came from weekends at the library, hikes through pine trails, Lego castles that collapsed and were rebuilt again. He came from backyard forts, holiday rituals, and a mother who never missed a parent-teacher meeting, even when she had pneumonia. Fiona had wanted the title of widow without the burden of history. But history lives, in ink, in images, in stories, and now, in her hands. I didn't need her to apologize. I just needed her to see. Because maybe, in some quiet moment, she would flip a page and feel the gravity of what she erased. Not just a mother, but a man's truth, a man's wholeness. A man she tried to shrink to fit her narrative. That album wasn't revenge. It was restoration. And for Ethan's sake, that was enough. Some goodbyes are stolen. Others, you reclaim. I held it on a Sunday, Ethan's favorite day. The day he used to sleep in till noon. The day we made pancakes shaped like Saturn and Jupiter, and ate them on the porch in our pajamas. I chose the same porch for the memorial. Not a funeral home, not some sterile hall, just home. The wind was soft that afternoon, brushing through the dogwood tree we'd planted together when he was 9. Its branches had grown, stretching taller than the roofline now, and the petals had just begun to fall. Little white reminders that something beautiful had once bloomed here. They came slowly, the guests, one by one, some with casserole dishes, others with stories. No black dresses, no hushed tones, just warm jackets and honest eyes. Mr. Kessler from across the street brought Ethan's old baseball glove. Mrs. Patel came with a box of handwritten poems Ethan had given her for her birthday each year through high school. The mailman, George, showed up in his uniform and asked if he could read something. He did. It was a joke Ethan had told him during a rainstorm, and we all laughed until we cried. I didn't send formal invitations. I called the people who mattered, the ones Fiona never thought to include, the ones who knew Ethan before her version took over. There were candles and music, not hymns, but his favorite jazz records, the ones he used to play while making spaghetti with far too much garlic. I hung a clothesline between the trees and clipped photos across it like prayer flags. Ethan at age 4 in a dragon costume. Ethan at 17, holding a broken guitar he refused to throw away. Ethan grinning on the hiking trail, arm around me, sweat on his brow, sun in his eyes. Each person took a turn standing beside the old garden bench and telling one story. Just one. That was the rule. But no one stuck to it. They poured their hearts out. A girl named Serena, who I barely remembered from his middle school years, came forward with trembling hands. I was in Ethan's science class. I was going through a really bad time. I never told anyone, but he noticed. One day he left a note in my locker. It just said, "The world is better with you in it." That's it. But it was enough to keep me going. There were at least 5 stories like that. Quiet, invisible kindnesses I never knew about. And now I did. I hadn't planned to speak. I didn't write anything. But after the last person stepped back, and the music lowered, I found myself walking toward the bench. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I looked out at the faces, then up at the dogwood. "I want to thank you," I said. "Not just for being here, but for remembering him, for seeing who he really was, not who he became when he was forced to choose between his life and the illusions someone else built around it." A hush settled. I didn't get to say goodbye. Not the first time. Not the fake time. I didn't get a program or flowers or even a call before they put him in the ground. I had to chase grief down like a runaway dog. But today, I paused. Today, I get to say it. On my terms. In my way. With all of you. I looked toward the chair I'd set up for him. Empty, of course, but not vacant. Goodbye, my love. My boy. My moon and back. A soft breeze picked up, rustling the photos on the clothesline. Someone behind me began to sing. Quietly. Ethan's favorite song. Someone to watch over me. Others joined in. Not polished, not perfect, but sincere. And I closed my eyes and let it wash over me. As the sun dipped low, we planted a new sapling beneath the dogwood. A lilac tree. His favorite scent. I tucked a folded note under the roots, the last one he ever wrote to me, and packed the soil around it with my bare hands. No priest, no altar, just truth, just love. I stood back and looked at what we'd built. A real memorial. Not a staged lunch, not a rushed lie, but a celebration of a life fully lived, of a mother fully grieving, of a goodbye earned, not given. And in that quiet, golden moment, I finally felt it. Not closure, not peace, just the full weight of goodbye, on my terms, and I was ready.